They thought Earth was weak, insignificant, forgotten. But when the stars turned cold, humanity reminded them who we really are. He was trapped for centuries, but he was human. Darkness surrounded the edge of known space, no suns nearby, no signals, just cold silence. It was here, floating alone for what could have been centuries, that the Thalzar Union salvage vessel detected a weak, ancient signal. The ship didn't match any known design. Its hull was scarred, pitted from micrometeorite impacts, yet it drifted as though untouched by time. A derelict ghost in the void, massive, silent, and menacing. Its surface was coated in an unfamiliar black alloy, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No name, no identification, just a shape, like a memory long buried in the stars. Captain Zalor barked orders, but even he sounded uneasy. There was something wrong. The crew whispered among themselves, tales of cursed wrecks and lost wars. But curiosity overpowered fear. They docked. Inside, the silence was thicker. Echoes refused to bounce. The corridors were dustless, dry, preserved. Lights flickered in strange rhythms, like something old still tried to breathe. And in that silence, a presence lingered. Not alive, not dead, forgotten. Kyle, an engineer barely out of his first field cycle, was the first to step in. He didn't speak. He just stared. Because before him stood a relic from the old nightmares. A human vessel, impossibly intact. Kyle's fingers trembled slightly as he held the scanner. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was fascination. Radiation levels minimal. Power core offline. Yet, atmosphere stable? He whispered. The others had moved deeper into the ship's upper deck, searching for salvageable tech. Kyle slipped away, curiosity pulling him like gravity. The corridors twisted like a maze, as if intentionally hiding something. He passed sealed hatches, shattered control panels, and walls scorched by ancient combat. Then he saw it. A sealed door. Clean, untouched. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, long slowed but not dead. He interfaced his scanner. The alien system responded, not to him, but to the ship. Almost like it recognized him as different from the others. The chamber opened with a slow, reluctant groan. Inside was a cryopod, sleek, old, terrifyingly human in design. And inside it, something impossible. A man. Kyle stepped closer, heart pounding. The human floated in stasis, eyes closed, face calm. Cryo data scrolled across the screen. Status? Stable. Time in stasis. 421 galactic years. Kyle's mind raced. That's not possible, he whispered. Humans went extinct centuries ago. And his hands hovered over the activation panel. He shouldn't. Every protocol screamed, don't. But his fingers moved anyway. This is worth exile, but this could change everything. And he pressed the button. A low hum echoed in the chamber. Lights blinked. Steam hissed as the cryopod began to warm. Kale stepped back, his breath shaky. Then, a twitch. The man's fingers moved. His eyes fluttered. Then silence. And suddenly, he sat up. The human's breathing was shallow, controlled. His gaze scanned the room, sharp but calm. He looked military, not just in appearance, in presence. Even half awake, he radiated control. Kale's voice trembled. Can you understand me?" The human turned, his eyes locking with Kale's. Pale green eyes, not cold, but calculating. He nodded once, slowly. "Where am I?" he asked, raspy. Kale blinked. "You're on a salvage vessel of the Thalzar Union. You were preserved." The human closed his eyes. "Stasis, emergency protocol. Mission failed. No extraction." His voice trailed off, then sharpened. "How long?" Kale hesitated. "Over 400 galactic years." Silence. Then the human smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile Kale had read about in classified war reports. A human smile. "Then humanity lost," he said. Kale nodded, but the human only stared at the wall and whispered, "Not yet." Humanity was legend now. Kale grew up on stories, tales of savage beings who fought entire fleets to a standstill, who bent machines to their will, who adapted faster than any species in the galaxy. But they were all dead, wiped out in the Great Purge, or so the record said. Now standing before Kale was the living proof those legends were real. Elias Ward, human, soldier, survivor. Kale felt his throat tighten. What had he just awakened? A relic of a war long buried, or a symbol of something deeper? He didn't know, but he couldn't look away. Elias stared at the alien who had awakened him. He had expected a soldier, a guard, maybe an executioner. But this one looked young, scared, curious. "You're not military," Elias said calmly. Kale shook his head. "Engineer, I found you. I shouldn't have activated you." Elias nodded slowly. The silence stretched. He looked at his hands. Still human, still him. But everything else was gone. "Earth?" he asked. Kale hesitated. "Gone. Not destroyed, but lost. Unreachable. Radio silence for centuries." Elias didn't react. His face remained still, but inside, grief thundered. Memories of a world that no longer existed echoed in his mind. "Then I'm the last," he said. Kale looked down. "Yes." But Elias's voice grew colder. "Or the first." Kale didn't report the awakening. He lied to his commanding officer, saying the pod was damaged and contained only remnants. But at night, he returned to Elias's chamber. They talked. About Earth. About the war. About loss. Kale asked questions no one had answers to. And Elias, slowly, answered. Not with facts, but with perspective. Stories. Warnings. "You didn't just wake me," Elias said once. "You pulled a spark out of ashes. That spark can either light the way or burn the galaxy again." Kale knew he had committed treason, but he didn't care anymore. Because in Elias, he didn't just see danger. He saw purpose. He saw humanity. And deep down, he feared what the Union would do if they ever discovered the human still lived. Darkness. Then, cold, bone deep. A sterile hiss broke the silence. Elias gasped, choking on air that felt too clean.
His vision swam in a blur of icy blue light. He reached up, fingers trembling, scraping against the smooth lid of the cryochamber. Click. The lid hissed open. The air outside was dry, humming with soft electrical sounds. White walls, metallic floor, no warmth, no voices. Elias sat up slowly, skin covered in frost, mind flooded with static and pain. He whispered hoarsely, Where am I?" No answer, just the sterile quiet of a forgotten room. He looked around. Everything was unfamiliar. Symbols glowed on walls he didn't understand. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, loud, lonely. Then it hit him. The years, the centuries. A countdown timer blinked beside the chamber. His eyes widened. 346 years, 5 months, 12 days. His breath caught. He thought, that can't be right. But it was. His world, the earth he knew, was long gone. The weight of time crushed him. His wife, his son, his team, all dust now. He pressed his hands to his face. A broken sob escaped. Yet even as grief threatened to drown him, a fire sparked inside. He was still alive. That had to mean something. He stepped onto the floor, legs shaking, and whispered to no one, "I'll find out why." The AI console flickered to life with his movement. Alien script scrolled across the screen, and then, translation. Welcome, Elias Kerr. Species, human. Status, extinct. He stared. Extinct. The word didn't make sense. Humans couldn't just disappear. More files, reports, transmissions. Aliens speaking of the Terrans in the past tense. They burned brightly and then were gone. Humanity challenged the folded alliances and paid the price. Elias's fists clenched. They talked like humanity was a story, a fable, like Earth had been nothing more than a spark in the dark, now snuffed out. He found a holographic archive. Alien historians, some insectoid, some scaled, others ethereal, debated over whether humans ever existed at all. Some called them monsters, others myths. None knew the truth. Elias stared at the image of Earth, a swirling ball of fire, labeled
Origin Site, Status, Lost. His jaw tightened. They thought his people were gone, that he was the last. "I'm not a myth," he growled, "and I will prove it." Kaal was the first Thalazar Elias encountered. Tall, lithe, skin like polished silver. 6 fingers, cold blue eyes that blinked sideways. Kaal entered the chamber with precision, his expression unreadable. "A human," he whispered in awe, "alive." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" "I am Kaal, xenobiologist. I study extinct species." "I'm not extinct," he bristled. Kaal tilted his head. "Statistically, you are." He walked around Elias like he was a specimen, a curiosity. "Your muscle composition is dense. Interesting. Do you remember war, the collapse?" Elias grabbed his arm. "I remember Earth, my family, not war." Kaal didn't flinch. He merely observed. "Your memory may be fragmented. I will need to run scans, deep probes, possibly genetic dissection." "Dissection?" Elias's voice rose, raw. "I'm a person, not a lab rat." Kaal paused. Something flickered in his expression. Doubt? Curiosity? Pity? "You are emotional," he noted. Elias snapped. "Is that a problem?" Kayal stepped back, uncertain. "Not a problem, just unusual." Thus began their fragile connection. Kayal wanted to understand him coldly, scientifically. But Elias, he wanted truth. He wanted meaning. Kayal brought Elias before other Thalazar. They watched him like a museum piece. The Thalazar were advanced, logical, void of strong emotion. To them, everything had a place, a purpose, and Elias disrupted that. He asked questions, too many. What happened to Earth? Who attacked us? Why is no one trying to find survivors? The council elders frowned. The past is dangerous, best left undisturbed. Elias couldn't hold back. You let a civilization vanish and you don't even care? Kayal gently pulled him aside. Elias, they avoid conflict. They do not argue. Maybe that's your problem. You ignore pain. You forget the dead. Kayal sighed. Pain clouds progress. No, he whispered. Pain drives it. They stared at each other. Two beings from two worlds. One led by cold logic, the other by burning memory. Kayal tried to help. He brought Elias alien records. None of them were clear. One scroll claimed Earth exploded. Another said it fell into a black hole. One archive depicted humans as demonic conquerors, another as peaceful dreamers. They don't know anything, Elias muttered. Kayal agreed. Your history is scattered, rewritten, feared. Why? Kayal looked away. Because humans were unpredictable and powerful. You refused to submit. The galaxy does not understand defiance. Then they never understood us at all. It came during a dream, or maybe a memory. Voices, static, screaming. A face, his commander, stern, proud. Kerr, listen, you are our seed. Survive, find the truth, rebuild. Elias jolted awake, gasping. He clutched his head. Seed? Kale rushed in. What did you remember? Elias was trembling. They put me in that chamber for a reason. I'm not a survivor. I'm a mission. Kale blinked. A mission? Elias stood, fire in his eyes. They knew we'd lose. They knew humanity would fall, but they planted me to start over. Kale's voice was quiet. Then you are not just the last. I'm the first, Elias said. Again. News of Elias spread. Fast. Too fast. The Thalazar Council gathered. Cold eyes, unblinking faces. Their decision came swiftly. The human must be studied, fully, no exceptions. Kale protested. He is sentient. He deserves protection. The High Speaker sneered. He is extinct. One does not ask permission from a relic. Kale's heart raced. Something in him had changed. He found Elias in the chamber. They're coming, he whispered, to take you, to dissect you. Elias's eyes burned. Then help me escape. Kale hesitated. His hands trembled. If I do this, I betray my species. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. Or you honor mine. A long pause. Then Kale nodded. Elias stood at the observation deck of the Thalazar vessel, gazing out into the stars that no longer felt like home. He had awakened from cryosleep into a galaxy so distant in time that Earth was little more than myth. What greeted him was not the sprawling future humanity had once dreamed of, but a galaxy strangled by caution. The stars were quiet, too quiet, not from peace, but from fear. He traveled with the Thalazar,
a once mighty species now reduced to caretakers of the known borders. Their stories were grim, of empires collapsed not in war, but in decay. Their world shimmered with technological marvels, yet none dared to push beyond. Peace here was not progress. It was a standoff, a stillness that hummed with the threat of violence should anyone disrupt the fragile order. Elias listened. He watched, and with every alien station and sterile corridor, he saw it clearly. This galaxy had forgotten how to hope. Exploration had become taboo. Wonder a risk not worth taking. The deeper Elias looked, the more it all felt like a tomb. He felt like a ghost in a museum of the dead. But it wasn't grief he felt. It was a simmering ache, a longing for the roar of rockets, for the daring steps into the unknown, for the wild, reckless beauty of human courage. The galaxy hadn't killed adventure. It had simply outlived it. And Elias, the last son of Earth, wasn't ready to let that legacy die. The more Elias explored, the clearer the picture became. The Thalzar were not alone in their retreat from ambition. Every species he encountered spoke in hushed tones about the Great Quiet, a term used to describe the end of expansion. No one dared venture beyond their maps. No new stars were charted. The edge of the known was treated like the edge of a cliff. The Varnathi had sealed their wormholes. The Obelarians dismantled their own scout fleets. Even the Thalzar, with their proud scientific legacy, relegated their explorers to maintenance work. It was as if the galaxy had collectively decided that curiosity was dangerous. "Progress invites collapse," said a Thalzar elder to Elias. "We maintain so we may endure." But Elias remembered differently. He remembered Earth's brutal trials and greater triumphs. Humanity had advanced not in safety, but through struggle. From fire to fusion, they had clawed toward the stars. This galaxy saw survival as success, but Elias knew better. Without the fire of discovery, survival was just stagnation in slow motion. He saw it in the haunted eyes of young alien officers, in the sterilized cities with no children, in the quiet refusal to dream. The galaxy hadn't just lost contact with Earth, it had lost what made Earth, Earth. It started with a broken relay on Deck 17. The Thalzar crew marked it as irreparable. Their diagnostics had run the calculations, and the verdict was clear: scrap it. Elias disagreed. With a grin and a tool belt of borrowed parts, he descended into the machinery. Hours passed, then a day. Kale, the Thalzar liaison, checked in, curious, then concerned, but Elias only waved him off. By the end of the second day, the relay hummed back to life, not only functioning, but optimized. Power efficiency up 22%, feedback latency down to near zero. "How?" Kale asked, his voice hushed with disbelief. "I stopped trusting what the manual said," Elias replied. Word spread fast. Soon, other dead systems were brought to Elias. In every case, he found a way. He didn't just fix things, he understood them. He questioned assumptions, he experimented, he improvised. The Thalzar had forgotten what it meant to think without fear. Elias reminded them, not with speeches, but with sparks and sweat. And slowly something changed. Kale lingered longer. Questions turned from suspicion to fascination. Other crew members began sketching designs, asking about Earth science. The ship, once dim with routine, buzzed with renewed curiosity. In Elias, they saw more than a technician. They saw a spark, a memory of what the galaxy had once dared to be. Late at night, in the engine room or cafeteria corners, Elias told stories. He spoke of Earth's first steps on Mars, of the solstice wars and the rebuilding that followed, of the refugee fleets that dared interstellar jumps with failing drives and blind hope. He told of rebels who overthrew tyrants, of scientists who cured plagues with only days to spare, of people who ran into burning buildings not for orders, but for each other. The Thalzar listened, at first politely, then intently, Kale especially. "You fought your own kind?" one asked, disturbed. "Yes, and we learned to fight for each other," Elias answered. His tales weren't polished. They were raw, flawed, but real. And real was what the crew hadn't known in a long time.
Kale asked the most questions. "What drove you?" Elias smiled. "We were never the strongest or smartest, but we refused to give up. That made us dangerous." Kale didn't respond, but later Elias saw him staring at the stars with a look that wasn't fear anymore. It was longing. The whispers started first, a Thalzar engineer humming an old Earth melody, a technician mimicking Elias's unconventional repairs. Kale began pushing against protocol, requesting access to old tech archives, suggesting exploratory missions to long-abandoned stations. "Your presence disrupts," warned the ship's commander. "Disruption isn't always bad," Kale replied. Elias noticed the change. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was becoming a symbol. The crew's posture around him shifted from skepticism to something like reverence. Kale confided in him one night. "You remind us of what we were before the fear, before the silence." "I'm just one man," Elias replied. "Sometimes one is enough." They weren't planning rebellion, not yet. But in their eyes, Elias saw the first glimmers of something stronger than fear. Hope. The Thalzar High Command transmitted new orders. Elias was to be detained upon arrival at the science station, studied, classified. "They think I'm a specimen," Elias said bitterly. "They think you're a threat," Kale corrected. "Because you are, to the way things are." The crew tensed. Murmurs grew. Some officers quietly refused to prepare containment protocols. Kale held private meetings. Security logs went missing. Schedules changed without explanation. Elias didn't ask for their loyalty, but he had earned it. As the ship neared the station, the tension was palpable. Would they obey or defy? Kale met Elias at the observation deck. "If we follow orders, you disappear. If we don't, we risk everything. Then it's time to choose. Who do we want to be?" They came for him at dawn. 3 guards, silent, armed. Their orders clear. Elias didn't run. He stood tall, hands steady. "You think fear keeps you safe, but it keeps you small." Kale arrived, stepping between Elias and the guards. "I won't let you take him." A standoff. More crew appeared, engineers, medics, pilots, not all armed, but present, defiant. They taught us what we forgot, that courage isn't comfort, it's risk, and it's worth it. The commander barked for order, but no one moved. Elias stepped forward. "They've forgotten what courage is," he said quietly. "Time to remind them." And with that, the fire reignited, not in engines or weapons, but in hearts. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, but humanity had returned. The cold metallic hum of the Thalzar vessel buzzed in the background, a constant reminder of where they were, prisoners, slaves, tools for an empire that saw humanity as nothing more than relics of a broken past. But Elias stood tall amidst the wearied crew, his eyes ablaze not with hatred, but with purpose. He didn't shout, he didn't beg. His voice was steady, raw with truth. "They want us quiet. They want us obedient. They think Earth is dead, that humanity was a mistake the stars corrected. But I remember who we were, and I refuse to forget."
Kale, once a loyal enforcer to the Thalzar, stared at Elias. Something stirred inside him, not rebellion, but memory of home, of choice, of freedom. Elias walked slowly past each face. We don't need weapons. We need conviction. We need to believe that we matter, that we can choose something other than fear. The crew shifted. Some looked away, ashamed of how easily they had adapted to chains. But Kale stepped forward, then another, then 3 more. Elias didn't command, he inspired, and the flame of rebellion was lit not in rage, but in resolve. The plan wasn't flawless. It wasn't even good, but it was theirs. Kale led them through the auxiliary corridors, forgotten maintenance tunnels too small for Thalzar officers. Elias clutched a stolen holo map, marking out the route to the ship bay. That hangar's guarded by sentries. We won't get 10 feet, Kale warned. Then we won't give them 10 feet. We give them ghosts. They moved like whispers, sabotaging lights, forging access codes with alien tech logic Elias barely understood but somehow manipulated. Human intuition filled the gaps that logic left behind. In the chaos of a triggered false fire alarm, they boarded an unused Thalzar scout vessel. Elias had studied its systems for weeks, mapping buttons and glyphs by observing patterns. It wasn't piloting, it was improvisation. The engines hummed to life. A siren screamed. They broke orbit. Pursuit followed instantly. Plasma shots grazed their shields. But Elias dipped the ship through an asteroid belt, using debris as camouflage. He didn't need speed, he needed unpredictability. They vanished into warp space, alive, free. The stolen vessel, though small, had a long-range transmitter. Elias rewired it, bypassing language locks, using emotional tone over structured speech. His voice would be carried as raw feeling. He sat before the console, heart pounding. This is Elias Kane, from Earth. They told you we died, they lied. We survived. We endured. The crew watched, silent. We remember who we are, and to those still hiding, still hoping, you're not alone. Rise, speak, remember. He sent the message across all frequencies, all languages. It wasn't just a call, it was a pulse, a spark. And across the stars, others felt it. Rebels, exiles, forgotten humans. They heard Elias's voice and wept. For the first time in generations, they believed again. Alarms blared. A Thalzar warship closed in. They've locked onto our warp signature, Kale said grimly. Elias inhaled. Then we change the rules. He activated decoy beacons, small plasma vents ejected with misaligned energy pulses. The warship split its fire, chasing shadows. In tight asteroid fields, Elias looped and twisted. He triggered mining explosives in their path, mimicking debris impacts. He guided the ship like an instinct, not a machine. Kale manned the countermeasures. Elias gave orders with calm clarity. Let them think we're panicking, then vanish.
And they did. A false trajectory sent toward a dying star. Their real path? A slingshot jump through a wormhole Elias guessed was stable. The Thalzar ship hesitated, then lost them. They had survived. In the black expanse near the Thorn expanse, an old signal pinged from an asteroid cluster. Faint. Human. Elias leaned forward. Plot a course. The relay was hidden behind layers of rock and dead tech. It looked ancient, forgotten. But when Elias approached, it lit up. A panel scanned him, accepted him. Biometric match, human prime. Welcome. The crew stared in awe as the relay powered on. Holograms danced, Earth's skyline, forgotten battles, names long erased from galactic memory. A console activated. Maps, coordinates, logs of surviving human colonies. We weren't wiped out. We just went silent. Hope surged. They weren't just rebels, they were messengers of return. The data was overwhelming. 1,000 years of silence explained in seconds. Earth's fall had been orchestrated, not by defeat, but strategy. Survivors had scattered, hidden in places no one dared search. Deep space arcs, sub-quantum vaults. We chose to vanish, Elias said, eyes wet. To heal. To survive. The location of the last great colony blinked on the screen. A hidden world beneath a red dwarf, self-sustained, waiting. It wasn't a myth. It was reality. And Elias had the key. The Thalzar caught up eventually. Their warship loomed, weapons primed. Elias made his choice. He redirected the power core, releasing an EMP burst that disabled the warship's systems without harming its crew. Kale stared at him. We could have destroyed them. That's not the message we send. He opened a channel. We are not your prey. We are not forgotten. Humanity remembers, and we're coming home. Then he cut the signal. The Thalzar ship drifted, powerless but intact. Elias looked at his crew. Let's go find our people. The stars opened before them. This wasn't an ending. It was a return. The galaxy had been quiet for centuries, its pulse slowed by the weight of forgotten histories. But now, something was stirring. Deep within the uncharted sectors, hidden beneath the veils of time and dust, ancient human technologies, long abandoned and forgotten, began to hum to life. Elias's message had rippled across the stars, a signal of awakening. The cryochambers scattered across distant worlds, once silent, now stirred with low, mechanical groans. The technology, some of the first human creations, came online like a dormant giant stretching in the morning light.
Elias stood at the helm of the ship, eyes wide with disbelief. He stared at the star maps displayed before him. The coordinates were clear. Human settlements were beginning to reactivate. Across the galaxy, places that had been considered myths, legends even, now lit up the dark expanse. Some had been abandoned centuries ago. Others had survived in secrecy, thriving in hidden enclaves. The thought was staggering. Humanity's legacy, buried for so long, was now rising from the ashes, calling out. Forgotten colonies, long in stasis, began to awaken. They would remember their ancestors, the explorers, the dreamers who had set out to conquer the stars. The galaxy had been without them for far too long, but now the seeds of a new dawn were planted. "Do you feel that?" Kale asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He stood beside Elias, staring at the screen. "It's like the universe itself is listening." Elias didn't answer right away. His heart pounded in his chest. The silence was more than just the stillness of space. It was the weight of a forgotten history, of human footprints that had long since been erased from the galaxy's consciousness. But now they were coming back, and with them came the potential for everything to change. Far across the galaxy, on a desolate world orbiting a dying star, the cryochamber opened with a hiss. The air was thick with the scent of stagnation and time forgotten. Inside, a human figure, long preserved in the cold stasis of sleep, began to stir. Captain Alina Winters' eyes fluttered open. The artificial gravity pulled at her limbs as she slowly rose to consciousness. The dark world outside the chamber reflected nothing of the bright stars she had once known. Her hands shook as she reached for the control panel. A burst of static greeted her. A broadcast, a human voice echoed across the chamber. "Humanity is not lost. We are not gone. We have merely been waiting for the moment to rise again." Alina's breath hitched. She wasn't alone. Others were waking too. Her ancestors' technology, once thought to be extinct, had survived. But there was more. Elsewhere, across the galaxy, other humans were emerging from the shadows. Some had been in stasis. Others had adapted to alien worlds, blending in with those who had long forgotten the humans that had once set the foundation of galactic exploration. On the planet Velion 9, a young human woman named Lyra moved through the crowded streets of an alien city, her face obscured by a veil. She was no longer the child that she had once been. Raised among the Velhari, she had learned to speak their tongue and live their way of life. But something inside her stirred when she heard Elias's message. The ancient blood that ran through her veins was calling her back to her true origins. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. The time had come to reveal what had long been hidden. Lyra was ready to face the truth. She was human. Elias never wanted this. He had been content living quietly among the stars, helping those in need, working as an anonymous figure behind the scenes. But now, as his message spread, he felt a weight pressing down on him. The galaxy had been waiting for him, and the eyes of thousands, no, millions, were now on him.
He paced the bridge of the ship, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. His thoughts drifted back to the quiet days before the message had been sent, before he became the symbol of humanity's resurgence. "I didn't ask for this," Elias muttered to himself. The silence of space stretched out before him, as empty as his heart felt in this moment. "You're not alone," Kyle said, stepping up beside him. "The galaxy's not waiting for one person to save it. They're waiting for humanity to stand with them again. And you're the one who lit the flame." Elias turned to Kyle, his eyes dark with doubt. "But I'm no leader. I never wanted to be anyone's symbol." "You're not leading them because you want to," Kyle said softly. "You're leading because you have to." Elias paused, taking a deep breath. He could feel the truth of Kyle's words. The burden wasn't a choice, it was a responsibility, and Elias would have to rise to meet it. The galaxy watched with bated breath, uncertain of what Elias's message truly meant. To some, it was a call to arms, a signal that humanity was returning to reclaim its place among the stars. To others, it was a warning, a reminder that humanity, once thought to be dead, was still capable of unimaginable things. In the heart of the Thalzar Council, tensions were rising. The counselor's voice boomed across the chamber. "This is a threat we cannot ignore. Humanity has not been heard from in centuries. Now they awaken, and we must ask ourselves, why?" On the planet Droska 7, the Valari emissary met with Elias's supporters in secret. "Some fear you, and some would welcome you, but the galaxy has grown comfortable without humanity. They do not wish to see it return." Elias stood firm, his voice steady. "We are not a threat. We are the spark that has been forgotten. I'm not asking for war. I'm asking for unity." But would the galaxy listen? Kyle had been a soldier, trained, loyal, and unquestioning in his service to the Thalzar. But something about the humans changed him. Something about Elias made him question everything he had ever known. He sat quietly on the edge of the ship's observation deck, his gaze fixed on the stars. Memories of his former life as a Thalzar warrior felt distant, almost like a different person. The brutality, the unquestioning loyalty to his commanders, it all seemed so hollow now. Elias approached him, his expression somber but understanding. "You've been through more than most, Kyle. I know it's not easy to let go of the past."
I've always thought of humanity as a footnote, an extinct species. But you're different. You don't act like a conqueror. You act like someone who wants to rebuild. And I can't ignore that." As the journey continued, Kyle's admiration for humanity grew. The way they fought for survival, the way they adapted. He saw it in Elias, who never wavered in his commitment to bringing humanity back into the fold. But it was more than just Elias. It was the entire species.
One evening, as the crew gathered around the table, Kale looked around at them, humans who had seen everything crumble, only to rise again. "They may not have the strength of other species," Kale said, his voice filled with respect. "But humans have something else. They have the ability to endure, to fight for what they believe in. They have heart, and that's worth following." Elias smiled, a glint of hope in his eyes. "We're not alone in this anymore, Kale. Together, we'll build a future." And for the first time, Kale truly believed in it. Humanity was not just surviving, it was thriving. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the newly colonized human world. The air was crisp, with a fragrance of fresh soil and blooming plants. A vibrant garden flourished in the heart of a quiet settlement, a symbol of humanity's indomitable will to grow and rebuild. Trees, some native to Earth and others carefully brought from distant planets, stood tall in the warm glow of the setting sun. This world, untouched by the scars of the past, seemed like a dream. After centuries of conflict, struggle, and survival, the human race had finally reached a place of peace. The soil beneath their feet was fertile with hope for a future untouched by the shadows of war. Here, humanity had planted roots once again, this time to flourish and create something lasting. Children played in the fields, their laughter a testament to the survival of their people. Their innocence, so pure and untainted, was a contrast to the battles fought by their ancestors. The stars twinkled above, distant and cold, but here on the ground, warmth and resilience burned bright. Kale sat in his quarters, his gaze fixed on the journal before him. His fingers hesitated over the pen as memories of Elias flooded his mind. How different he had been from the cold, emotionless race he had known. Elias, in his moments of anger and laughter, had shown Kale what it meant to truly live. Humanity's fire, a flickering flame at times, burned with an intensity that the Thalzar could never understand. He was relentless, Kale wrote, his words flowing as if the very ink carried his respect for the man who had shaped his transformation. He was a warrior in his own right, yet more than that, a man who believed in the impossible. He never stopped fighting, never stopped hoping. Elias, with all his flaws, never gave up on the belief that humanity had a future, a place in this galaxy. And in that belief, I found something I had been missing, the strength to change. He set the pen down, letting the silence of his quarters settle in. He had been many things in his life: soldier, enemy, survivor. But now he was something new, and it was because of Elias's spirit that he had the courage to look beyond his past and see humanity as it truly was. As Kale continued to reflect, his thoughts turned inward. He had spent years surrounded by the Thalzar, a race that prided itself on strength, logic, and dominance. But what he had come to learn about humanity was something no other species could offer. It wasn't just their ingenuity or their capacity for innovation. It was their spirit, their will to rise again and again from the ashes of destruction. "There's a fire in them," Kale wrote, his fingers pausing over the words. "A fire that can never be snuffed out. They fight not just for survival, but for something more: hope, connection, love, the things that make them human. The Thalzar don't understand it, and perhaps they never will. But Elias showed me that it's that very spirit that makes them dangerous, makes them unstoppable."
He leaned back in his chair, his thoughts drifting to the countless civilizations lost to time and war, to those who never had the chance to fight. Elias's legacy is not just his name, but his spirit. The strength he embodied will ripple through time, inspiring generations of humans and perhaps even alien species. The universe will know that humanity, despite all odds, will always find a way to endure. We may not understand them fully, but we cannot ignore them. He closed the journal with a soft thud. The galaxy had been changed, and somewhere deep within, Cale knew that humanity's legacy would echo across the stars long after Elias's death. They would continue, they would thrive, and they would never be forgotten.